Hello, Art.
Yes.
Hi. I don't have a whole lot of time.
Well, look, let's begin by finding out whether you're using this line properly or not.
Area 51.
Yeah, that's right. Were you an employee or are you now?
A former employee.
Former employee.
I was let go on a medical discharge about a week ago, and I've kind of been running across the country. Oh man, I don't know where to start. They're gonna they'll triangulate on this position really soon.
So you can't spend a lot of time on the phone. So give us something quick.
Okay. Okay. What we're thinking of as aliens, Art, they're extra-dimensional beings that an earlier precursor of the space program made contact with. They are not what they claim to be. They have infiltrated a lot of aspects of the military establishment, particularly the Area 51. The disasters that are coming, the military. I'm sorry, the government knows about them, and there's a lot of safe areas in this world that they could begin moving the population to now, Art.
But they're not doing anything.
They are not. They want the major population centers wiped out so that the few that are left will be more easily controllable.
Discharge.
I started getting...
Lost all transmit capability on this end. Here in Nevada, the transmitter went belly up suddenly for some unknown reason. I've never seen it do this in all the years that we've been on the air. I have never seen the transmitter in this way just simply fail, massively fail, like a massive heart attack of some kind. And so we have gone to a backup system to get the signal to you right now, and I presume it is getting to you right now.
The terms slave patrol and militia were interchangeable and synonymous, literally the same exact thing.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
Currently, what the communists call their Negro Revolutionary Movement, now masquerading behind the humanitarian banners of civil rights, is contributing tremendous momentum to the communist plans to take over the United States.
You tell them white folk in Mississippi that all the scared niggas are dead. We want black power. We want black power.
Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. The amendment would also give the federal government the power to enforce that principle.
When I heard about Sacramento, I was like, damn, these brothers are bad. They're here up in Sacramento in the capital, packing.
Tear down this wall.
Okay. So all these fanatical militia Nazis and shit who are in agreement with your average suburban white person at home with a kick-ass TV set, that, of course, Clinton is not only satanic, but he worships the Marxist Satan. And clearly, he's bringing perversion, because just look around at all the Lollapaloozas with the piercings and the dyed hair people, and the oh my gosh, the grunges are coming, and not only that, they're also way brutally overstepping. They're just coming out of, they're not even trying to hide their Satanism and their hatred of Jesus anymore, because, you know, look what they did to the Weavers and what they did to Waco, right? And so, you know, for those that didn't actually build giant holes in the ground and fill them with decades worth of food and move in, a bunch of them, you know, weaponized and started running around in the dirt with their matching camouflage, fancy backpack clothes and stuff, and bought a bunch of guns and shoot them at trees and targets, and they're ready, and they're so fed up with this just terrifyingly, monstrously imaginary threat that's coming for them and all their guns, that they just need anybody and everything. Anybody but Marxist Satan Clinton and all his overstepping, his big government and his Jesus hating. Anybody please, right? And all of these fucking people, they vote for this C-average student, bourgeois motherfucker's son of Bush Sr. They vote for George W. Bush. Well, but not the vast majority of Americans. They didn't vote for him. He lost the popular vote. And it goes into this big thing, and they're going to have a recount in the state of Florida. It all comes down to that state, and they're having this recount thing, and a bunch of right-wingers, literally a mob of totally straight-up violent fucking right-wingers, like rich people and shit, like real paid operatives and shit, went down there and mobbed the station and terrified the shit out of the people counting the votes. So they just said, nope, we're done, we're not counting anymore. And then there's a Supreme Court fight over it.
All Al Gore needs is Florida.
Recount, they are saying. Recount.
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 We have been thrown into a horrifying and tumultuous nightmare known as the recount.
New York Times says the tactics strikingly similar to what extreme GOP activists did in the 2000 federal recount. In Miami back then, GOP operatives seized on a false rumor to stage what became known as the Brooks Brothers riot. Walk with me. What you're witnessing there ultimately shut down the recount right here in Miami, and it never started up again. The man who reportedly orchestrated that riot was Trump's longtime fixer, Roger Stone.
When some of my operatives reported that two of the Democratic commissioners were attempting to take a sheaf of ballots, remove them from the counting room, this is what sparked the so-called Brooks Brothers riot. I said, flood the hall and don't let them shut that door.
Don't let them shut the door. I'm joined now by Florida State Representative Joseph Geller on the ground here. He was actually a Democratic official at the time in 2000, and in the HBO film Recount, he's actually the guy chased down the hall by these Brooks Brothers rioters.
That's right. Hi, I'm a lawyer with the recount. I need a sample ballot, please. Thank you.
He's got a ballot!
No, it's a sample.
He stole a ballot!
This guy.
He works for Gore. He's a lawyer for Gore. He steals his ballot.
Time to pack it in.
The Florida recount ended, and the presidential election was settled when the U.S. Supreme Court effectively ruled in favor of Texas Governor
George W. Bush!
While I strongly disagree with the court's decision, I accept it.
After a difficult election, we must put politics behind us. I'm optimistic that we can change the tone in Washington, D.C.
And the Dems, in their just, you know, tyrannical, unwavering, militant drive for Satanist Marxist oppression and brutality, when the right wing challenges the Supreme Court, says to the Supreme Court we don't want him to count anymore, and the Supreme Court's like, I don't know, should we count? The Democrats like, I don't know, I don't care. Because they're really militant and hardcore oppressive and whatever. They're just like, yeah, whatever. And so the Supreme Court says, okay, cool, Bush wins. And so he does. And he comes into office, if I'm not mistaken, with the lowest first-term approval rating going into office of any president prior to him. If he's not the worst, then maybe it's like one other president came into office with a lower approval rating. But it's shit. And basically people are convinced he's going to be lame duck like his fucking paw. Just a $1 chuck. One-term fucking joke. And he seems kind of like not very intelligent. Seems not very intelligent, which that was the talking point. I would argue that, and a lot of us did argue that, no, he's a lot smarter, and this whole folksy thing is a put-on. It's a show to win over your less educated people in the suburbs, whatever, your average white motherfucker. Right-wing white motherfucker. So it just looks like he's not going to last. But something happens, kind of changes all that. And that's 9/11. The whole world, clearly, everyone's heard it before. There's before 9/11, there's after 9/11, and that's absolutely true. The whole world changes. Changes we're going to focus on are, however you feel about what happened with 9/11, of course there was all the conspiracy stuff that grew out of it, right? All the notions of 9/11 truth, and we're not getting into all of that. Except that I will say that now when you look at that, that's the realms of your Alex Joneses and stuff. And we're going to get into him briefly here in a second. But, it's a concept that is clearly in the gross ass conspiracy death cult mill that the right wing traffics in today in 2020. And but at that time there was a lot of even people on the left. We'll get into the financial collapse that happens at the end of W's administration a little bit later, but. I'll just say this, and we'll leave it at that on 9/11, is that even a lot of the people that were involved with Occupy and people that I knew and that I worked with in Reno Occupy and stuff, people talked about, I wonder what really happened on 9/11 and stuff. But again, the conspiracy thing, the conspiracy industrial complex hadn't solidified yet. This was a moment that I would say out of 9/11, that is one of the things that really, really took root in the way we can recognize it today, that in conspiracy industrial complex. That's where, figures like who I mentioned earlier, this dude who was occasionally a guest on Art Bell's ham radio show out of here in Nevada. Talked about alien stuff, but mostly it was a lot of what really is going on in the government that they're not telling us. Now, that got into alien stuff because Art Bell's in Nevada, Area 51's in Nevada. Anyway, it was a hot topic of the day, but there was really all this political stuff.
Authorities in Nye County have not yet determined what caused the death of nationally syndicated talk radio host Art Bell, the king of late night.
Bell died at his home in Pahrump last Friday at the age of 72. True to the conspiracy tone of his programs, there are some now wild stories floating around his death. The I-Team's George Knapp knew Bell for almost 30 years and is here now with more tonight.
One national news outlet, I think it was the Washington Post, referred to Art Bell as the mysterious navigator of the American nightscape, and so he was. His late-night radio career started here in Las Vegas and blossomed into a syndicated network of hundreds of stations. Many of the programs focused on the weird and conspiratorial, so it's not entirely unexpected that some of his legions of followers might speculate about the cause of death with unsupported theories, including everything from murder to suicide to a hoax. From what we have heard, there were no signs of foul play at his home in Pahrump. The cause of death has not yet been determined and may not be known until toxicology tests are returned, and sometimes that can take weeks. Bell retired from the air a few times, but always returned, including back in 2013 when he agreed to host a show on satellite radio. He gave only on-camera interview at that time, and I shared some of his press clippings with him to hear his reaction.
His greatest achievement is to make the utterly juvenile completely captivating.
The utterly juvenile. I don't think it's utterly juvenile. Questions like life after death and where we go and what happens to us, these are not juvenile questions. Some of them may well be. I mean, face facts. Some of what I do is flat out entertainment. I've never hidden that fact. Some of it is hard science, and I leave it up to the audience to decide which is which.
It's more fun to be weird than right, more fun to wonder than to know. Do you think that's someone speculating about what goes on in your head?
I think that being weird is okay and being right is important. I guess you could say I'm rightly weird.
At his peak, his show, Coast to Coast AM, had 12 to 15 million listeners per week and covered much more than UFOs and the paranormal. As a matter of disclosure, I was a colleague of Art's at different times over the years and still fill in on that show on some weekends.
But prior to Art Bell, I don't put Art Bell in the same category, clearly. I just want to state that with a shithead like Alex Jones, or with, I would say, like the John Birch Society, which is really, that's the machine that kicked off the right-wing conspiracy industrial complex that we know today. Back with their, the Marxists are behind, Martin Luther King and all that kind of stuff. And the Mao was coming to take over America or whatever, through people fighting for civil rights. But they also, around the time of the JFK assassination, John Birch Society was all about it's the Marxists who did it. And then in the Reagan era, John Birch Society was the ones, you may have heard weird tale of the fluoride in the water. Well, it was the John Birch Society were saying that the Russians were were using fluoride in our drinking water to make us docile so that they could control the minds of Americans to come and do a Marxist takeover. They're going to wheel in the body of Stalin to rule all of America and whatever, right? But so all these bits and pieces are there throughout the, the decades and the generations. But post 9/11, man, that's really when people really want to go to David Icke conferences for 9 hours. People start paying attention and buying the videotapes from Alex Jones and stuff, right? And so there's the beginnings of that. But the other thing that happens that is far more significant than any conspiracy theory notions about what happened on 9/11 was the Amerikkਾ slave patrol, Western imperialist mechanisms of death's response to 9/11. Again, doesn't matter who did it, why did it, truth 9/11, truth not 9/11, whatever. The response from the Amerikkà mechanisms of power was almost indescribable in its scope for its ability to oppress the people in this country. We talked in the very beginning of the series about the formation of the country being about owning other people and profiting off of the ownership of other people, and how the Second Amendment facilitates a police force that can be called up at any time to catch any of the enslaved people who want to escape from that, from being exploited and profited on and abused in that way. And how we fought a civil war over this, and how in the post of the Civil War, we get the 13th Amendment, where they put the exception clause in there that just allows for state ownership of people as opposed to private ownership of people, and that's when we get the police forces that couldn't put into place, right? And the police forces that we know all across the cities and throughout the country now, and that's when the whole convict leasing mechanisms go into place, right? To maintain this ownership of other people and the profit off of other people. And that chugs along, is growing and is growing and is growing. By the time it gets to the Clinton administration, that's when they put in this place, the crime bill, which just emboldens the whole mechanisms of the slave patrols and the convict leasing tenfold, and becomes the mass incarceration that we know today, to where we have not just physically more people imprisoned in the country than anywhere else in the world, but per capita we imprison more people than any other country in the world and in the history of the world. Okay? But all of that massive growth and evolution in the mechanisms of the slave patrols is just nothing in comparison to what's put in place in response to 9/11. That's the Department of Homeland Security.
What is the role of Homeland Security? On September 20th, 2001, in response to the tragic 9/11 attacks, President George W. Bush proposed the creation of the Office of Homeland Security. The office was created the following month. Then, in 2002, the president announced his plans to create the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS. Today, this cabinet has more than 240,000 employees and is the third largest cabinet department in the United States government. The National Strategy for Homeland Security defines their approach as a concerted national effort to prevent terrorist attacks within the United States, reduce America's vulnerability to terrorism, and minimize the damage and recover from attacks that do occur. Funding for Homeland Security has risen from $16 billion in 2001 to $71.6 billion in 2018. The department is responsible for public security, such as anti-terrorism, border security, immigration and customs, cybersecurity, and disaster prevention and management. There are 6 key focus areas. Let's take a look. Number 1, intelligence and warning. Has a number of strategic initiatives to support their mission with intelligence and warning. These include working with the FBI to hire intelligence analysts with specialized expertise, such as computer skills, foreign language capacity, and science and engineering backgrounds, and also using red team techniques to improve the department's capability of detecting terrorism. This is achieved by DHS staff. Number 2, border and transportation security. America's borders total 7,000 miles of land with Canada and Mexico, as well as coastlines, lakes, and rivers, which also fall under DHS's jurisdiction. Number 3, domestic counterterrorism. Terrorism is top of the priority list for DHS. It's the reason the department was created. The reach of the internet has also fueled the growth of homegrown extremism, where individuals based in the United States are recruited online. And since 9/11, initiatives with Homeland Security have seen the FBI handed far larger budgets. Law enforcement officials now have better tools, including roving wiretaps and the authority to seize assets, and judges are able to pass higher sentences when convicting individuals of terrorism. Number 4, protecting critical infrastructure and key assets. In total, there are 16 critical infrastructure sectors. These 16 areas are chemical, commercial, communications, manufacturing, dams, defense, emergency services, energy, financial services, food and agriculture, government facilities, healthcare and public health, information technology, nuclear reactors, materials and waste, transportation systems, water and wastewater. Since the private sector owns an estimated 85% of all critical infrastructure in America, private sector partnerships have developed to ensure the success of Homeland Security in areas such as vulnerability assessments, determining criticality, and other activities associated with critical infrastructure protection. Number 5, defending against catastrophic threats. To ensure materials are unable to enter the country through ports, and the Department of Defense works with foreign countries who have nuclear programs to ensure continued strict security for the global inventory of nuclear weapons. Number 6, emergency preparedness and response. DHS also reacts to natural disasters that impact millions of Americans every year. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, is a team within the department. Since inception in 2002, the Department of Homeland Security has absorbed immigration and assumed all border safety and security responsibilities. It manages all aspects of domestic security. So, do you think America is a safer place since the introduction of these Homeland Security strategies?
That's the slave patrols from the slave patrollers from the FBI and the covert fucking mechanisms of the slave patrol, the CIA, they're all fighting. Like the FBI's all like, it's not our fault 9/11 because the CIA didn't tell us that they knew stuff about so it's their fault the 9/11 and don't blame us the 9/11. CIA is over there like, nah, dude, it's not our fault the 9/11. It's because the FBI, they didn't have the thing with the report and they didn't tell us, so it's them because 9/11, right? And so all this shit, Bush goes, when they're all going, hey man, we need some way to, seriously boost our budgets because we need like billions and billions of more dollars because 9/11 happened and stuff, so give us a lot of money. And also we need some type of like umbrella net thing that we can consolidate all these different subgroups of the slave patrols under one mechanism that can then be, a full-on body because, these 19 people hijack some planes. And so we need to do this so that we can police everybody. Puts into NSA, goes into place, which we now know, thanks to Edward Snowden. It just instantly went into place, just wiretapping all of us. Our devices are all listening to us today. That all begins in response to 9/11 with the NSA. But the Department of Homeland Security, and this is when ICE kicks into place, is in the midst of all this and gets put up, and not necessarily right in direct response, but ICE is under it. Like, all the different law enforcement bodies are ultimately now answerable to the Department of Homeland Security. I mean, it is just the largest unbridled mechanism of fucking slave patrolling power. It's just beyond imagination almost. Like, I don't know in their wildest dreams that a Marx or a Malatesta or a Bakunin or a Lenin could have really envisioned a Department of Homeland Security. But that's what gets put into place. And then, that's just domestically. That's to keep us all in line, right? But what also goes into place is, the CIA goes into Afghanistan because, Bin Laden was there. And even though, 17 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia, we also go to war with Iraq. So, oddly enough, there's a shit ton of heroin in Afghanistan. And the CIA has long needed to, fund its covert operations in South America and all over the world through selling drugs. And if you just, again, I mentioned in the segments on the 80s about going down the rabbit hole about Iran-Contra. Holy shit, go learn about the CIA and cocaine. But also learn about heroin and the CIA's roles in Afghanistan and how prior to us going into the war in Afghanistan, like in that transition, the amount of global heroin production and distribution out of Afghanistan just skyrockets. And now we have all the talk on the daily news all the time about the opioid epidemic at home. Okay, it's all grown in Afghanistan. Okay. We're still at war there because Bin Laden was there for a minute. Just keep in mind that we're still at war there. We're still bombing shit there, women and children, and drone striking and shit there. But yeah, we also go, hey, by the way, because of these 19 people that flew planes into buildings, we're going to make up this bullshit that Saddam Hussein, who Bush Sr. didn't successfully murder in the first Desert Storm. By the way, America put Saddam Hussein in office. He was a CIA-backed dictator who flexed against us, and so we had to get rid of him. We fought 2 wars. The second one is, oh shit, 9/11, and then they're like, what's that got to do with Saddam Hussein? WMDs. He's got weapons of mass destruction. Check it out. I got this thing right here. There's this little thing right here, and it has stuff in it and whatever. And check out this picture of this train with this lab on it that I drew. Guess what? Saddam Hussein's going to nuke and anthrax everybody in America. So 9/11 also.
9/11 was bad.
I agree with that.
God, I can't believe how easy this is.
Mrs. Griffin, what are your plans for cleaning up our environment?
9/11.
Mrs. Griffin, what about our traffic problem?
9/11.
So 9/11 also, because 9/11. And so we went to war with Afghanistan and Iraq. And we're still there, both of them. We didn't go to war with Saudi Arabia, the country that 17 of the 19 hijackers that did 9/11 are from and were trained by and funded by. Because, you know, it also, because, you know, it made your average person that used to love Reagan and then became a militia prepper under Clinton. Dude, they fucking hate Muslims now. They're like, fucking every Muslim that ever existed in history, 9/11 the shit out of my country, and fuck them, let's murder all of them. Guantanamo Bay goes into effect. They're like, nuke Guantanamo Bay. Bunch of people not tried for anything. Administration goes about torturing a bunch of fucking people. None of those policies of torture that were such a huge thing that we don't talk about anymore, none of those policies went away. They still torture the shit out of people that most likely didn't do anything to America, but we have to torture them because we have to have excuses for military budgets and justify our foreign intervention and shit. Then Bush is all like, hey, you know what else we need right now? A serious fucking tax break for the most richest people in this country. And the Bush tax cuts go into place, and that's exactly what he did. And everyone's like, dude, if you do that, like what's going to happen is you're going to tank the economy. And he did. We're going to take a close look at that in the next video, or in the next section of the series. But first, check out this video, and then we'll be right back.
Turn on the record player! Cover your ears, everyone!
We're talking about it once a month, so
You know, it's been stopping me.
very valuable.
Feel like you're
Label.
I've been
Even the mere mention of the word is sufficient to induce panic.
Tomato.